Take a look at this picture, the normal running of a normal day. Take a look specifically at the people within this picture. Can you see anything interesting? You may not notice it, but TBI and ABI are present within this picture. TBI is what is called a traumatic brain injury, and ABI is an acquired brain injury. So can you pick which person within this picture suffers from a brain injury? I myself have suffered from a moderate to severe traumatic brain injury. I've been extremely fortunate though in my recovery, but what about those who haven't? Brain injuries are present in not only our older generation, but our younger generation too. TBI can happen to you during a trip to the shops from a car accident or a night out at your local pub ending up in a fight. TBI is caused by a simple blow to the head. For someone to have an acquired brain injury, they are either born with the condition or their body grows this silent disability. During an assessment with my neuropsychologist at the Brain and Mind Institute in Sydney, I was told that I would benefit from seeing a clinical psychologist as I suffer from severe depression. My neuropsychologist continued to say that I would be put through a program specifically designed for people with dementia, schizophrenia, or those aged over 55 years. Now that had me thinking, what else isn't there for young people like myself and millions of others aged between 18 and 54? Mr. Alan Lee feels the stress and frustration that comes with his wife residing in a rehabilitation nursing home facility in Sydney following a viral infection to her brain. He has advocated to various MPs and the Department of Health for ongoing support.
I think the big frustration for our family, certainly going through this whole situation, is that the limited access to the services, or should I say the appropriate levels of services that our young people really need. If we ever have a referendum, I think a lot of people will be willing to pay extra tax for a good cause. And I mean, depending on how the government really wish to get that via a levy or get that via an income tax, I mean, that we don't know. But I would think that most people in the community wouldn't mind paying extra taxes for that maximum for that level of comfort, given that it could happen to one of their loved ones.
Sharon Kleeman visits her son Alex in palliative care almost every single day. Her life and her family's life have changed significantly since Alex suffered brainstem damage following an operation to remove a brain tumour just over a year ago. Sharon is afraid that the only option she sees available to have him cared for 24/7 is to place him in a nursing home. What are your thoughts on young people being placed into nursing homes?
They shouldn't be there under any circumstances. I don't know who informed me of this, but I was told that there are in excess of 50,000 young people, now I don't know whether that's in New South Wales or whether that's in Australia, that are in aged care facilities. They shouldn't be in aged care facilities. If there's 50,000 young people, even in Australia, why isn't there a facility for these young kids to go to and to be looked after? The bulk of brain injuries are caused through car crashes, what I've been told, is through car crashes. There's a lot of kids in the system from failed suicides that have massive brain injuries from failed suicides. In New South Wales, to my knowledge, Royal Ride Rehabilitation, I think it is, has a very small unit that they take brain injury kids with trackies. And to my knowledge, that's all there is. Aged care, kids should not be in aged care. Aged care is for aged care.
From your own personal experience, what do you think needs to be changed legislation-wise, support programs or network-wise?
Well, I can't understand why there isn't something just for young people. I mean, we have Ronald McDonald House for very young kids. We have aged care, and there doesn't seem to be anything in between. So if you have a brain injury or you have, a disability where you can't be looked after at home for whatever reason, or your injury is too bad to be looked after at home, why isn't there something for the in-between age? my understanding was that aged care should be no younger than, I think 47 was the very youngest that anyone would take. Aged care would not even take Alex because he's got a trachea. There are very few aged care facilities that would take anybody with a trachea. So if you've got a brain injury where you can't swallow anymore, you can't breathe properly, and you need a trachea, what's out there? So they need to organise something, a facility just for between the Ronald McDonald and the aged care, I think.
Young Care is just one of several organisations which raise money and awareness of young people living in nursing homes. Their motto really says it all: young people deserve young lives.
I think one of the biggest things for young adults with a disability is that they're not treated as young adults. They're often treated as children or as some sort of... There's huge financial issues. There's never enough money. And I don't think there's a soul that you spoke to would ever say that we've got enough funds. There never is. I think the comprehension of people in general, they don't understand that when somebody has a disability, that you have to cater often in a different way. You have to do things quite differently, and no one person is the same.
Just also, what do you think needs to change in order for these people to be supported, to be better off?
We need some more funding, but I think that, you need funding along with changing people's perspectives and ideas. And most people who have a disability or a sickness are seen as a little bit different to everybody else, and that general mentality has to change, and we need to start changing that in schools so that young kids grow up and see people who are a bit different as perfectly normal.
Daniel Barricate has previously worked as a carer for young adults in nursing homes and hospitals. He now manages an ageing, disability and home care program for the Department of Human Services, New South Wales.
Well, I guess there are a number of reasons. Firstly, one of the problems was that the care provided didn't really match the needs of young people, because younger people might have physical disabilities like brain injuries or MS or something. And so the type of care they require is very different to the type of care of an elderly person that might have dementia. Again, the activities provided there are things like, canaster, and I don't even know what canaster is, and I remember one of the young people saying, why would I want to do that? And there's also a lack of opportunity to get into the community, because if you're in an aged care facility, you don't have access to any of those sort of services that aim to get people into the community, and so there's really no age-appropriate activities, and often, people have to share a room with older people who may have dementia, and I think that's really hard when you're already struggling with the losses of, having an acquired disability. So you've got the insight that, things were not always like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And the program you're working on now, what's the program based on?
Okay, the YIPRAC, and we call that a lot, it's a bit of a big word, Younger People in Residential Aged Care program aims to do three things. Firstly, it aims to provide better and more age-appropriate accommodation in the community to a number of young people who are inappropriately placed in residential aged care. It intends to try and divert people from entry by providing accommodation, a whole range of care and support services. And for people who decide that they want to stay living in aged care, and some do, we provide enhanced support services like community access, like therapies, like massage, and like a whole range of other things to try and increase their wellbeing and quality of life.
Debbie Claypole is a site manager for Australian Home Care Services.
How did the organisation get up and running, and why? Why was there a need?
It was established 5 years ago by our chairman, David Conry. His wife at that time was diagnosed with MS. She was actually diagnosed when she was 26. By the time she was 32, David had to put her into aged care because he could no longer look after her at home. And so knowing that that was the only option that he could find, he thought that that was appalling, which it was and still is, and so formed Young Care to look at what options were there out there, and surely there could be better options than aged care for young people. As we talk right now, there are 6,500 young people who are living in aged care. There are 700,000 others who are being cared for at home, and both of those environments are completely unacceptable in that there needs to be other choices. So if you're living in aged care, you're surrounded by people who are on average 86 years of age around you, completely different generation of people with completely different interests and completely different care needs. It's all about dementia in aged care and age-related fragility issues. On top of that, if you're living in that environment, those people have a lifespan of less than 3 years. So you are surrounded by people who are dying around you. It is not a healthy environment for a young person to be living in. If you look at the other option of living at home, which is what any of us would want to do, to be cared for at home, I always say to people, think about what it would be like to care for someone 24/7. And 24/7 isn't flippant 24/7. It's not like going to work for 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day. It is actually looking after another human being 24 hours a day, every day of the week. There's no weekend off. It's every day of the week. And that sort of situation puts families under enormous strain, and most families end up fractured as a result of it. We don't receive funding from government to run Young Care.
How did you get involved with Young Care?
I've always thought that Young Care is a fabulous organisation. For the past 5 or 6 years, I've supported them as an individual, and because I understand that this sort of situation could happen to me, to someone I love, to anyone I know, without a moment's notice.
Bernice Deo works for the Spinal Cord Injuries Australia and speaks of the reforms needed in New South Wales to resolve this issue. Cherie is part of the peer support program.
I mean, our aim is to put some intensive supports into that initial period on the basis that getting somebody prepared to go home properly gives them a better start at being independent for the rest of their life and not slipping back into a hospital or nursing home situation. So their life should be changing through the system after they've had the injury, and the system should be a bit more holistic about the way it approaches rehabilitation for the person. So I think we're doing a job that's based on the fact that the system isn't really doing a very good job at the moment. It's a very health orientated system, and it's really structured in a very health system sort of way, and I don't think that actually, like Cherie says, prepares the person adequately for going home. So sometimes you feel as though you're fighting the system just to get them to the point where they're more and more integrated in the community.
Usually once a person goes home and they do start to acquire the skills that they'll then need to get back into doing those things in society they used to do, whether it be education or employment or recreational activities, what we hope to find is that the disability starts to take second place and that their life starts to take over. And in that natural course of events, then the family would be involved less and less and the friends would be involved less and less. Hopefully, just to a bit of a level like it was before.